This is another archival upload of some of my previous mix critique videos. I apologize for the vertical format that this video is about to switch to. This is 186 to 190. This was sent in by Jack. Dude, this sounds fantastic so far. Honestly, the only thing that is sticking out so far is that I can maybe use a little more high-end overall in everything, but for the most part, this sounds really good so far.
But I guess the joke's on me.
The vocals sound really good. They definitely have a bit more high-end than everything else. Don't have enough in everything else is because you wanted that space for the vocals, which I can understand. But honestly, I feel like the high-end could even come up a little bit in the vocals as well. Like honestly, if you just put a high shelf above like 1K, not a lot, like 1 or 2 dB, just lift everything above 1K, this whole track I think would sound a lot better already. The only other thing is I can't really hear the bass. If there's even bass in there, it's like completely inaudible. There's no definition in it whatsoever. Like you have a nice round low end overall, but there's no definition in the bass. Like I can't pick out that I'm actually hearing bass in there. Main notes here, bring the guitar down a little, bring up the overall high end a bit. I need to hear the bass a little better, and I don't know, maybe a little bit more compression overall on the output bus. Like definitely needs to be mastered still. Like it's not loud enough. It's not quite compressed enough. Like it's missing that little extra like 10%, but overall the general sound of this song, it sounds really good. This was sent in by Jonathan. Now, this is probably going to be the shortest mix critique ever because, Jonathan, I'm assuming it was a mistake, but you only sent me like a 20-second track. So I'm not sure if that's actually supposed to be the whole thing or if you just accidentally bounced out just a portion of it and sent that to me. Not sure what the deal is there, but I will do what I can to give you as much advice as I can based on that 20 seconds. Okay, sounded like some kind of a video game soundbite. Yeah, based on that, the drums were not cutting through nearly enough for that style of like 80s arcade music type stuff. Like I think part of that is the compression on the drums. Like you have your attack set way too fast on the drum compression, not cutting through at all. We're not getting the low end that I would expect from something like this. So like just the overall lows, whatever bass synths you have in there, those need to come up a lot. But yeah, there's 20 seconds here. There's not much for me to go on. So that's pretty much all the advice I can give you. This was sent in by Brian. Alright, that one main distorted synth is like overpowering everything. It's drowning out the vocals, it's drowning out the drums. Like the amount of high end in that is making it sound like there's basically no bass in the track at all. You guys all need to remember that it's a balance thing. Like you can't have low end if there's way too much high end and vice versa. You can't have high end if there's way too much low end. Like it's a balancing act. It's all a balancing act. You need to find the middle ground for everything. You have a good amount of sub information, but that's not where most people are going to be hearing the bass. Like you have a hole between like 150, maybe 200 hertz up to like 500 hertz. Like that's what most people are going to perceive as the low end of the track. If you have a massive hole in that section, for most playback systems, it's going to sound like there's no bass whatsoever in your track. You need to not boost so much below 100 to get that low end. You need to fill out those low mids. That's where all the energy in your track exists, is the low mids. The track has like a vibe to it, and I think it could be really cool. That's your biggest problem here, is that massive hole in the low mids is completely gutting the energy of your entire track. This was sent in by Kinflow. What I'm noticing so far is what I'm assuming is like a really processed hi-hat, those like really high-pitched tinny like clicks. Those hurt. Like those are painful. That's probably like the 2.5 to 5K range that you've just like boosted the crap out of in those. I understand you're going for a certain sound, but like the amount you've boosted those frequencies is really making those painful. The other thing is the main bass line, the way it's working where you started and you're walking down, it's getting to a point that it's hitting a note so low that it's like it's losing energy because it's nearing the point where it's not going to play back on most systems. That's the thing with a lot of bass synths is like you're going to reach a certain point where those notes are almost inaudible. Like maybe double that line an octave up and mix it a little lower so that when it hits those lowest notes, rather than it feeling like the volume is decreasing because we can't hear it, the volume will be maintained because it's being filled out by a slightly mixed lower upper octave of it. I mean, it sounds pretty good. You might have pushed the master a little too hard on this, but you have a really solid mid-range, which is going to make this sound good on most playback systems. But if I want to get real nitpicky about it, some of those high-end things you're pushing a little too much, and you're also missing a little bit in the low mids. This was sent in by Dylan. You had me with the sick bass line in the beginning, and now the intro is way too fucking long. Should have cut this in half. You should have had the guitars come in after the first time through the riff.
How do you react when the walls close in like a kick in the guts?
So honestly, tones aren't bad. Mix is pretty solid. The biggest problem is the guitars are way too fucking loud. Like the drums are getting drowned out. They're drowning out the vocalist. The bass guitar could even probably come down a little bit. It's hard to tell right now. But yeah, definitely the guitars are way too loud. They're overpowering the drums and the vocals.
Down! Take a big deep breath! Whoa, down!
The drums also feel a little too loose to me. Like they could definitely be compressed a little more. The snare could definitely cut through more. Again, it cutting through is partially that the guitars are too loud, but even then I still feel like the snare needs a little more like snap to it than it currently does. I mean, honestly, it's a solid mix. Like the only thing I would really change is compress the drums a little more so they like have just a little bit more energy to them, and bring the guitar down and probably also bring the bass down a little bit so that the drums are like just cutting through over the top of the guitar, and so we can actually hear the vocals, because obviously vocals are the most important part in any song. Like if the guitar's drowning out the vocals, that's a huge problem. But like other than that, like that's literally just a levels thing. Like you can adjust some faders and again compress the drums a little more, but like overall this is a really solid mix.